Good evening and welcome to TDM Talk Show. I'm your host, Kelsey Wilhelm. Our guest tonight is Hong Kong cinematographer Pun-Leong Kwan, winner and nominee for dozens of awards for his work on films as well as documentaries. Having worked over the years with acclaimed directors such as Wong Kar-wai, the cinematographer is here tonight to give us his insights into his career so far and the reason for becoming a cinematographer. Good evening. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Nice talking to you.
So let's start off from the very beginning. I understand that you've gone through multiple artistic areas before staying with cinematography, which is a very deep and involving passion. But where, I understand you also did photography, but you're no stranger to the stage as well.
Well, actually, when I was studying sociology back in the college, I was involved in the theater performances, and then I watched a lot of this kind of performances, and then I also involved in it, playing different roles, like being an actor, or I'm not good at that. But it gives me a lot of inspiration and working as a team. So I was drawn into that kind of energy. So after I finished my college, finished sociology, I decided that because what I was being inspired is by the art. So I would like to go on to that path, and then if one day I could share the same inspiration to other people. That's how it began. So, but after studying in the Academy for Performing Arts, the film and TV department, and then the first job I did was actually a still photographer for a magazine called Film Bi-Weekly. And then while working in this magazine, I had the opportunity to see a lot of people filming in the location, like the famous directors like Cui Hak or other. And then the first work I did was actually, I was sent to Philippines to take pictures on the film Days of Being Wild, made by Wong Kar-wai, his second movie. Yeah,
that's quite a progress. But in terms of photography, is very specific. There's the art of the stage, and then there's art of capturing moments through photography. How did you decide that you wanted to do photography? Were there any influences on you, or why did you choose to do so?
Actually, I was choosing between doing editing or camera, but then I think for me, camera, I can go out with, if I major in camera, I can go out to see the world and then bring what I see to the audience. But for editing, it's more or less relatively more passive role, because I need to stay in the editing room and wait until others to finish their filming, and then I see how they see the world. So I choose to be studying camera. But then after I've been doing the magazine, working on the magazine, and I also involved in indie productions, like filming underground TV, music videos, something like that, for more than 7 years.
All right.
And then I was very passionate about expressing in terms of visual language. So at the moment, there's a chance came up. Director Stanley Kwan, who saw my the short film I made, and then he decided to invite me to become his team. And then I told him that I know nothing about movie, but then I learned.
But that's quite a step. I mean, there's a certain style which is used for music videos, which is visual storytelling as well. But how did you find stepping from that into shooting your own short film?
And actually, that's a very interesting question. I find that the main difference between me and most of the professional cinematographers is that I'm greedy. I'm interested in all kinds of different forms of visuals, like stills. Even these days, I still take stills, and then I interested in stage performances, and then documentary. I made a couple documentaries, and that gives me a wider scope on different kinds of work. You know, actually, visual expression doesn't divide into different forms. Only us, when we are doing certain jobs, we will divide them into different forms. We can always use, like in some movies, when the director wants to express a scene, in reality, then I can use some techniques I learned from documentary to make it like in reality on the cinema.
In regards to your work, I mean, it's taken you not only to the Philippines and as well to Hong Kong, but to Taiwan, and you've come to Macau also, working in Macau. What did you find that experience like in terms of Macau as a visual setting, as a backdrop for film?
Well, Macau in those days is about 15 years ago, I think. I first came when Albert G, one of the pioneer, he made actually the first feature film in Macau, and then I came here to work with him. And then, as you know, Macau was totally different from now, and then a lot of things is quite nostalgic at that day. And then, but I find one thing even more interesting is that the people, how they work together, because in those days there's not much system developed in terms of filmmaking in here, and not much equipment here. But then what is the strength of the city is that the collaboration. People like neighbors, you know, and many small space, they are hiding in different places. You can't find them, but once you need them, like Albert, he will ask his friends to come out to help the props or help being the assistant for camera. All the people come from nowhere. I don't know where they come from, and they can get everything done very easily. It's the cooperation that I until this day I can remember well. That's the essence or something very unique treasure in Macau, because people live so close to each other. They are like brothers and sisters. I can say something like that.
And Macau's film industry is quite small. It's not very developed, and given the scale, the size of the city, it's never going to be something like Hong Kong's, for example. But do you think that especially with some of the younger people that you've encountered while you've been here most recently, and seeing how they collaborate together, do you think that spirit of collaboration and helping is still alive?
Yes, I find it still alive. As this time I'm coming here to be the residence in the one of the cinema path.
Passion Cinema, yes.
Passion Cinemas. And then I find that they also coordinate the similar way as the old days, because a lot of friends could come to help, like the neighborhood. There's a hotel they offer for us to film in their hotel. So it's very warm kind of human touch, and then helping each other. Yeah, that still exists.
You've gotten to work with quite a few great people, and people have had the pleasure of working with you as well. But one of the names that comes to mind immediately is Wong Kar-wai, and specifically the film 2046. Now I understand that there was that you might have done something in Macau that related to the film. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Actually, that film, one part of the film is actually filmed in Macau. And then that part is about the story of Zhang Ziyi, the female actress whose encounter with Tony Leung. And then that part I was not involved actually. I was it was shot by Chris Doyle, because I was after that part he was having another engagement in the States, so he got to leave, and then I became the cinematographer. But what was interesting is that Albert, actually the guy I mentioned, he invited me to give a lecture one day when I was in Macau. And then after the lecture, I stayed in a hotel room. And then in that hotel room, they gave me the room number is 2046. And then after I finished that lecture, about a week later when I go back to Hong Kong, and then I got the invitation from Wong Kar-wai. Said,
No way.
yeah,
Okay,
that's true.
okay.
And then something more strange
Wow.
happened. I didn't talk about this during the filming, and then right after the filming, and I talked to the producer, did you know what happened to me? I was staying in the hotel, and then when I come back to Hong Kong, I was called into the team. And then she said to me, really? Which hotel you stay? And then I told her, and then you know what? When Wong Kar-wai was filming that part in Macau, he was actually staying in the same room
In the
as
same
you
hotel. What?
That's destiny. I don't know what happened.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Well,
Really fate.
that was not the only project that you worked on with Wong Kar-wai and with Christopher Doyle as well. What is it like working with them?
Actually, I've been working from
years,
the second production of Wong Kar-wai until the redux of Ashes of Time is quite many years later. And then I was involved in different parts of the production. It's been fascinating. It's a long learning process for me because Wong Kar-wai is so flexible. You know, Hong Kong filming style is about flexibility, but for him it's even more to the extent that
Which can be good and difficult.
yes. The good thing is you don't think too much because you can't plan too much for tomorrow.
Okay.
The difficulty is you have to standing on floating ice every minute and you need to concentrate to think how to save myself because you don't know what happened. It's been a good learning. Because from then on, I can take this kind of experience to when I'm filming in Taiwan and when I'm filming in the mainland, it's very useful for me.
In terms of the different, not only what you see when the film is put out, but also the crews themselves, working with the crews. You find that within Macau, you get kind of a various mixture. There will be younger people, there will be people who have studied abroad and who have come back. There will be people who have stayed here the whole time or have worked in Hong Kong and come back to integrate into film crews. But what do you think about the difference in between, say, for example, the Hong Kong film crews and the Taiwan film crews? Do you find that some of them tend to be having a bit more of the youth participating?
Yeah, the Hong Kong once was a very successful film industry. Nowadays, it's working the way back, its way back to the vitality because the market has changed.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but since for the very good time in Hong Kong, like the 80s or even 70s, a lot of technicians were trained during that period. They still staying in the industry, and then they are becoming something like the stronghold of the industry. At the same time, when I am working in Taiwan, it's totally different, opposite thing. Because at that moment, like the 80s or 70s, the film industry in Taiwan is not so mature. So nowadays, when I'm working in Taiwan, a lot of team members in the crew, in the team, they are very young graduates. They came from the school. They were very attracted by art. Like some of them have been studying drama or studying movies. And then when they come into the industry, they are full of passion. And then that makes a really difference scene. When you are working with young people, you become younger. Yeah, I find it a most treasurable moment here now in working in Taiwan.
And in terms of, I mean, you also have taught with the Hong Kong Academy of Performing Arts. What do you see about the next generation in Hong Kong? Are we starting to see maybe some of that resurgence, some of that passion, or do you think that in the build-up to get back to the heyday, people might also focus more on the technical side and not so much on the passion?
I feel that it's the object, the environment for filmmaking is getting a lot more difficult for the young generation, and then and it seems like when they are in the school, they have more creative, much more chances for creative work.
Yeah.
And then they are more easily accessible equipments, and the technology is very user-friendly these days. So there's a discrepancy when they go out into the real filming world and then find that it's so difficult to be surviving. So that's what we need to deal with. I think for the young generation, when before they go out to participate in the film industry, they must be prepared that it's unlike what they see from the big screen. It's so glamorous world and a lot of dream to be fulfilled. That is one part. Yeah, another part is you need to work much harder, even harder than the old days. Yeah, in order to they need to prepare for that.
A lot of people are now going out and expressing their desire to be involved in the cinema industry through channels like YouTube and shooting short movies on things that may be done, let's say, on iPhones or something like that. In a way, yes, technology is making cinema more accessible, but how do you see the evolution of technology itself in terms of the next generation of filmmakers? Or is it something that's good for them? I mean, you have the cases of entire movies being animated or shot with green screen or other styles like that. But at the same time, you have people who would never have access to a camera of sufficient quality to film something that now have access to that. What's your view on technology's role right now?
I find it very interesting because you can say that that the technology helps cinematography a lot, because a lot of things you used to be struggling with the machine. Now it's like the camera or the apps can solve it for you in an instance. But the bad thing is that because everything is so easy, so sometimes you are tempted to be filming before you really feel something or think about it. You take pictures before you have really seen something important. So you take lots of pictures, but they become less intensity. Yeah, because cinema is about how the director sees a different world than others. Otherwise, everyone can see the world outside. They don't need to see your story. It's about how you can see differently. So it's very important nowadays for us to be reviewing how we could use that easy, user-friendly machines but we see a different world to express it, to share with others. Some people are very successful with it. Also, the whole tradition has changed. As you said, YouTube, you can with the YouTube you can make a short film which can be or a segment of video which could have 1 million hits in one day. That is what the cinema cannot do sometimes. Yeah. So the whole old belief of having a lot of resources to put into a big production has been dissolving. Nowadays, it's about the strength and then whether you can capture the life, the essence of the life. Yes. So it's totally a new game.
It's very interesting. But there's still, in order to create a good movie, it's arguable that you do still need to be able to pull the budget, to be able to get a large crew, to be able to have strong actors. Is that getting increasingly more difficult, and will it continue to only get more and more difficult?
I think, as you see from the mainland China, it was difficult 20 years ago, but it's getting so easy in the past few years. So I think I have heard that it's now over 700 movies made in the mainland China every year. Yeah. So when it's the peak of filmmaking in Hong Kong, it was like 200 something movies. Okay. It's almost every 1.5 days there's a movie in Hong Kong. But when people are sticking to the old formulas, trying to repeat the same thing, that it loses its strength. Okay. The market loses his strength. So it's also what I said before, or what we discussed before. It's about the life.
Yeah.
Once cinema is about life. If you cannot capture the life, and then you try to repeat something, the audience will just leave.
In regards to that, to capturing those essence, you'd mentioned before that in terms of when you're focusing on documentaries, you like to focus on people. When you're choosing projects to work on in terms of film, are there any certain genres that attract you more?
You mean topics?
Are there, certain topics or even genres of cinema, such as something like science fiction or romance or comedy? Are there any of those that you feel you find yourself more engaged with?
Actually, different kinds of songs, they can be very different, and at the same time, they can be about the similar things, like human touch, or about love, or about passion. So it depends on for example, like the 2046, there's a part in about like a futuristic style, but it's also about how people get warmth, and then how people feel about the future and past, and then it's all about people's emotion and then sentiments to each other. So if in terms of that, if you grasp the essence, how to express that, you can do whatever film genre you like. Yeah,
I like that. That's very good, because there are various moving parts within the whole creation of a film, starting normally from the script to then also the DP and the director. So how would you describe the interaction between what is the role of, in particular, the DP and the cinematographer interacting with the director, and how do they get along?
Yeah, I think my role as a cinematographer is to help the director to express his view, or his what he perceives about his story visually, through light and shadow. Of course, I need to infuse my own feelings into light and shadow. Of course, there are many equipments I need to cope with in order to get that done. But philosophically, or coming to the bottom, is about light and shadow. Every different kind of color and light and shadow express certain sentiments or emotions. It's how you create that world, so that you can invite the people and come into this environment, and to experience this similar kind of life as the actors experience.
In terms of Macau as a backdrop, working with light and shadow, does it mean that the current concentration of neon lights that we have will mean that Macau will always end up telling a similar story? Or do you think that there's a lot of diverse stories that can be told in Macau?
I think what is interesting is that, of course, as you said, a lot of neon light over there, glamour, and then also a lot of, I find this time when I come to Macau, a lot of young people, they started a new business, small shops, but very well decorated, very fashionable and neat. There's something different from any other places, because in most other places the shops are much bigger, but for the young people, they can start small business, really small sometimes.
It has to be sometimes.
Yeah, but it's interesting. And then the next door, and there could be a old store and an old shop running by aged people. They are like moving operating in slow motion.
Yeah,
like
different
the
worlds.
same way as 30 years ago. Nothing has changed. So the energy, the dynamic of both becomes very unique, something of the Macau, I think. So actually, more than the neon lights, there are different lights.
And in terms of, I mean, obviously, when you're exploring as a photographer, even before the more of the cinema focus, looking at the underbelly of Hong Kong, or the other sides of Hong Kong that you don't commonly see, Would you, let's say with the students at the Hong Kong Academy of Performing Arts, do you suggest that people go and explore the city, almost as if they're location scouting in their free time?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Actually, nowadays, the students has a lot of different homeworks, and then
yes, true.
Yeah, they have different subjects to study. They don't quite go out to yeah, it's good for me. In my time when I was when I remember 1 year before the handover, I was wandering on the street and taking lots of pictures of different areas, and then seeing different part of Hong Kong, and then that becomes something very memorable to me. And then because I did not know that at that moment everything will change so quickly. Yeah, those pictures nowadays you cannot take it.
Yeah. It's true, and Macau also, we're getting to the point, well, the Hong Kong was 2 years ago. This year, Macau is going to be seeing its 20th anniversary of the handover, so it could be an interesting project. Did you bring your camera with you this time?
I bring my phone. I become lazy.
It can work, it can work. In regards to cinema itself, there are a bunch of different areas, and I'm very curious to know if you also, as you mentioned, you like to work on different types, shorts, documentaries, music videos. You've worked with indie. Do you find that there are other areas that you want to branch out into cinema? Or are there current areas that you work in still, such as script writing, for example? Has script writing ever attracted you as something that you could say, okay, I want to be this and this?
Actually, I just filmed another short film that is not for the cinema, but for a gallery, museum. That was a collaboration with a Chinese artist who's Chao Fei, who made a short film about a tycoon, which was a complex. Jail used to be a jail in Hong Kong, and then that's also interesting because that's different, very different from what I made before, which was put into the mass media to be seen by lots of people, but instead it's for the people who are interested in fine arts. So it's a totally different story. I find it there are more and more different forms of this kind of video or work. Some are like interactive videos you can film, or so there are different forms coming up, like those film for the using the goggle to see. Yeah. So virtual reality and then different kind of works. So I'm ready to explore and then to see what we can do about it.
What do you think about that, though, in regards to the changes? Because it seems like when you're offering people a chance to, such as they did recently with Netflix, they made a choose your own ending type of movie where you can switch to different parts to construct the ending that you want to have. Or virtual reality, do you think that that will change how we tell stories?
Yes, as you can see, as the technology has been developing and people are trying to test if whatever can improve or to bring some new element to the cinema. As we can see, a few years ago, there were quite a few, several 3D movies. Nowadays, less people are making it. And then later, people have been trying the 120 frames per second, like Leon.
Yes.
Yeah. And 4K images, something like this. We have been exploring different possibilities. Yeah, but it's a very interesting thing we are trying. But coming to the bottom of it is also about how you relate to people. Yeah, if the technology can help us to find a new way to see the world, then it becomes successful. Otherwise, it's just maybe it's something like a new form that you want to play with for a certain moment, then you forget it and then try another one.
Okay. So do you think that in terms of the ingrained view that we have of cinema, such as images of Casablanca, or certain things which are typical, which tell us that there's a format, a type of format for film, do you think that that will slow down the potential takeover effects of other things like technology? Or, I mean, we've seen technology evolve very, very quickly within the past 3, 4, 5 decades. And the film industry has been around for longer than that, luckily. But will we see a radical shift in how films are not only made, but are given to audiences within our lifetimes?
Well, I think actually cinemas are coming into more diversity rather than the old way of filmmaking will not be stopped at suddenly, but it will become something that certain people would like to see.
Okay.
And then there are different ways also, and then so the diversity of it it's not like in the old days, and then everyone go to see the same movie. Yeah.
Well, let's hope that diversity is something that is still visually appealing, and I'm sure that you will continue to make sure that we have the best that we can see on screen. Thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you.
That's all we have for this evening. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more TDM Talk Show. Good night.